not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order. And I think this would be a more stable one where you would have a coordinated policies. I think the makings of it are already there, because the G20, in agreeing to peer reviews, effectively is moving in that direction.
Do you think it's possible to persuade China to allow the renminbi to become stronger?
I think that they would be, they have been agitating for it, so I would take them at their word and use the special drawing rights more often, and make the renminbi, even though it's not convertible, part of the SDR. In other words, it should be one of the currencies used in the special drawing right arrangement, and that would bring them in.
And that's possible even with the renminbi not being convertible?
Yes. It has been considered before, and I think the Brazilian real should be also part of it. I think that a number of currencies which constitute the basket can be and should be increased.
And what about the American concern that aiding and abetting this move away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency ultimately means a weakening of the U.S. economy?
No, I think that is. I mean, we did have great benefits from it, but we have abused it, and I don't think we can continue abusing it anyhow. So it is not necessarily in our interest to have the dollar as the sole world currency, because as the world economy grows, it needs additional currency. And if the dollar is that additional currency, it means that the U.S. has to have a chronic current account deficit, and that is not appropriate. So I think it's in our interest as well to reform the system.
At least in the short term, though, isn't it very convenient for America that the rest of the world is underwriting American spending right now?
Yes, it is. But the willingness to do so is greatly diminished, and I think that you will find that effectively China will buy less and less of the U.S. government bonds, because it will have a smaller surplus with the United States, because China will be diversifying. It will be lending to Brazil and South Africa and other countries in order to finance its exports to those countries. So I think this is a healthy, if painful, adjustment that the world has to go through.
If America doesn't actively take part in this sort of renegotiation of global finance, what will happen? What's your nightmare scenario?
Well, the Chinese will go bilateral. They already do it. They already have a clearing arrangement with Argentina, and I think they're working on one with Brazil, and you will find that there will be more and more bilateral arrangements. So the dollar will remain the main international currency, but its use will decline. So I think that a world of bilateral relations is less desirable than a continuation of a multilateral system. But the system we have now has actually broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. And so you need to create a new one. and this is the time to do it.
In the United States, how worried are you about the budget deficit and maybe about the possibility of inflation?
Well, certainly a decline in the value of the dollar is necessary in order to compensate for the fact that the U.S. economy will remain rather weak, will be a drag on the global economy. China will emerge as the motor replacing the U.S. consumer. And of course, it's a smaller motor because the Chinese economy is much smaller. So the world economy will have less of a motor. So it will move forward slower than it has in the last 25 years. But China will be the engine driving it forward, and the U.S. will be actually a drag that's being pulled along through a gradual decline in the value of the dollar.
And domestically, what about inflation? Is that something that you're worried about?
Well, it could be if the economy lending restarts and the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve is not shrunk commensurately. But I think this is something that it's a delicate maneuver, but I think it can be done. So there would be a slow decline in the value of the dollar, a managed decline. And that would be the adjustment that it needs to be accomplished. Now, it could actually get out of hand. And certainly the fear of inflation will precede inflation itself. And actually the fear of inflation in the markets, let's say driving up interest rates, could then forestall the inflation and push the economy back into a recession. So you would have a stop-go kind of economy, which is similar to the 70s.
And how worried are you about the Fed taking maybe a more hawkish position and raising interest rates possibly too soon?
Who, the Fed?
Yeah.
It's unlikely to do it because they have the Japanese example in front of them, and they see that the Japanese did it a few times, and it has actually set them back. So there is 25 years of excesses have to be worked off.
And what about President Obama? Should he be more worried about budget deficits or more worried about the recovery fading away?
I think he is more concerned about the recovery fading away. He's concerned about unemployment, and I think he's right to be concerned. Now, the trouble is that it seems that businesses are extremely cautious, and even as you have some recovery, they don't actually hire. They actually are producing good profits by cutting costs. And so you're going to have continued unemployment.